Assalamu alaikum guys. In this video we will build a CRUD project using Laravel 11. Our idea, it's a task manager using Laravel 11, and as we can see here we can easily create a new task with title, date and description here. Then we can see alert after creating a task. Then in our dashboard we can see our tasks with due date and with its status. Also inside edit and show we can change the status and any field as we can see here. Then we move to last part is delete operation after confirming. So let's start. Now let's create a new Laravel project using a composer. I will say composer create project Laravel/Laravel and I will call it my tasks. By the way, you can install Composer easily. If you search here, we can see Composer or gitcomposer.org and you can follow instruction from download here, right? Let's back to our terminal and as we can see, it's created successfully. And now I will say ls to list my project. I will move to my tasks project, cd my tasks, and I will open it using VS Code by saying code space dot. Let's check our .env file, and as we can see here, our app name is Laravel. I will change it to my tasks, as we can see. But if there is a white space, we must wrap it with single quotations or double quotations, as we can see, right? After that, I will change the database connection from SQLite to MySQL, and here is MySQL by default. Host is my local host, and it works on port 3306, and my database name will be my tasks, and my username is root and password is empty on my machine, right? So you can change them according to your MySQL settings. Now I will install my starter kit Laravel Breeze. As you can see in Laravel documentation, starter kits, Laravel Breeze is already minimal implementation for authentication features and registrations and password, as we can see here. So we can install it in easy way by saying composer require breeze. Here in our project I will copy paste this command, then we will run php artisan breeze install here, and we can select I will install it with Blade, Laravel Blade template and Alpine, and I don't want to use dark mode. Also, let's make it by default PHP unit. It's okay. Now it will install dependencies for Breeze. After that, we need to publish our database tables. We can see them here inside database folder and migrations and create users, caches, jobs, tables. For now, we need only users table. Others, we may use them later. So we can see it creates user table with name, email, password, and verifications, creates reset tokens for passwords, and sessions to store sessions, as we can see here. All right, now let's run php artisan migrate. As we can see, we have option, and because my tasks database is not created, so Laravel can create it. I will say yes. If you don't see this option, we can go via Table Plus or PHP My Admin to just create the database, right? So I will select yes. As we can see, let's open our database, my tasks here. And as we can see, users table, sessions, password resets, and migration. Now we need to implement the assets using npm install and run dev. So I will say npm install or just I. After that, we can say npm run dev, and we need to keep it run for our local development. And I will open a new terminal, right? npm run dev still run here, and in a new terminal I will say php artisan serve. As we can see now, our project works on this address. Now it works fine. Here is our Laravel project version 11.20, and also we have login and register. Let's create a new user using register. I will say Ahmed, and my mail is ahmed@mail.com. and I will create password here, then registered successfully, right? If we open here our roots inside app web.php, we can see here profile, authentication, and also we have auth.php file. This file here responsible for authentication and registration. And if we open register user controller here inside our app HTTP controllers, we can see register user controller. First, it has auth.register blade, right? And it uses guest layout, as we can see with CSRF and our form here. If we back to us again, we see register store here, and after storing the user, it's firstly validating it, required and must be unique inside our users table with password, default rules, and then create user. After that, it log in the user, then redirect us to dashboard, as we can see here, right? If we open the dashboard, it's inside web.php, our dashboard here, which is dashboard view inside resources views dashboard here. You logged in, and if we change it here, hello, for example, refresh, works correctly, right? If we remove it, it's removed also. If you noticed here also, if we back to Laravel, please, it comes with Tailwind CSS framework. And instead of writing Tailwind, because in this video we will focus on backend, I will use Dice UI. If you don't know Dice UI, it's a read component. Instead of writing button from scratch with a lot of classes and so on, it just a ready component using Tailwind CSS. So for example, if we open it here for components button, for example, if we go to HTML, for example, for this button, we can just copy paste it. But firstly, we need to install it. So we can say install npm run dev. I will firstly disable npm run dev that we already run. Then, as we can see, we need to add required UI inside Tailwind config.js. Where is this file? As we can see, it's inside the root dir here, Tailwind config CSS plugin. Paste it here, and it's imported successfully. If we open app.css also, we already have base component utilities. Now it's fine. If we back and rerun npm run dev again, and inside our dashboard, for example, back and refresh, it's fine. And I will take a button from here, for example. Let's take this code, copy paste in our project to make sure that works correctly. Back and check. It works fine. We may notice some difference in colors, but now it makes sure that the UI works correctly. It's okay. I don't need it predefined here, but I can remove it. It's okay. For buttons, for example, we can say text white, refresh, and works correctly. Now let's remove them and let's create a new controller. If you state also PHP artisan serve works and npm runs here, then in another terminal I would say PHP artisan make model task with migrations and hit enter. It generates two files inside models here, app models task.php, app models task.php, and another file for table tasks table here inside database migrations and tasks table.php. I will say table string title of task, table description, it will be text description, and it may be nullable, and I want to say table timestamp or even just date for due date, and table here enum called status, and it will has two status, pending or done. But instead of making this to status hard-coded, let's make them inside enum class. So I will say PHP artisan make enum. I will call them task status enum. It will be string, and created successfully app task status enum here inside app task status enum, but instead of making it inside app directly, I will create a new folder called enums, and I will move it inside enums, move, and don't forget to generate a new namespace, app \namespace. So I will say our first case pending will be pending, second case will be done, also done here, done. Then I will use both of them here. So if I back and I will say array column for task status enum class and get values only, value. We must use cases, not class, by the way. I will show you the result. If we open PHP artisan tinker, PHP artisan tinker here, I will say task status enum cases. Before that, let's run composer dump and let's rerun PHP artisan tinker again. Cases, as we can see here, it returns array of task enum. Each element in this array has name and value. I said just show the values or get the values only as array, like this cases array here. The first parameter is array, and the column I want to get value only from each array, value key value. Refresh, as you can see the same result, right? It's a good practice. Now let's run PHP artisan migrate. So I will say here PHP artisan migrate. If you noticed, before running it, we don't have tasks table. Migrate now. Migrate successfully. Refresh our database, and we have tasks, title, description, due date, status, and by default timestamps comes from this function for created add and updated add columns, right? Now inside our task model, I will say protected and fillable property to set which columns will be fillable by user, right? And I will say title, description, due date, and statuses. Here I will say title, description, due date, and status. And by the way, the created add and updated add will be filled automatically. Same thing for ID, because if we open this ID method, we can see big increment is here for unsigned integer with auto increment, right? Now we created the first part of MVC architecture, which is model. Model means responsible for database tables. We have task and we have tasks migration, and it's okay. Let's move to implementation of V and C, which means views and controllers. Now let's create our controllers and views. I will say PHP artisan make controller, and I will hit enter, right? I will say task controller, and as we can see, it suggests a lot of controller types here, empty or resource, singleton, and so on. But because it's a CRUD operation, I will ask it to make it resource. And if you see here which model, it will be for task model here, and I will select it using arrow, hit enter. As you can see, the controller has been generated inside app http controllers task controller. Let's follow it. Here our app http controllers, and as we can see, task controller. If you noticed also, it comes with a lot of function for, as we can see, this comment for index method display listing of the resource, which means for our tasks. Let's skip it for now. And as we can see here, show form for creating a new resource. I will use it, but before that, I want to create a new view or form to be used. I will say PHP artisan make view, and our view name will be tasks.create to show create form. And if you notice, tasks dot converted to tasks/create.blade.php. If we open it, back to resources, views, tasks, and create.blade.php, right? And now I want to show it. I will say return view here, and I want to say tasks.create. And let's create a root for it inside our web.php file. Let's open it inside roots, web.php. It will be get request, and if you notice here, I will add it under auth middleware here. Yes, the user must be authenticated, so I will say root get task/create. Then I will say array for our controller name, task controller, and the class. Second parameter is the method name. I want to call create when the user visits this page, and I will give the name task.create. Now let's back to our create.blade, and I will add a message here, h1 create new task. And inside our dashboard, this dashboard, I will add a button or a link to go to create page, right? So instead of using buttons, I will use link directly inside navigation, link here. As we can see, I will take a link, copy the code, and after login message, I will add it. I will say create task, back and check. As you can see, create task. Okay, I will remove your logged in message also. Then I will convert it to button btn, and I will say text white, and now it's fine. Let's define our href, and using curly braces, root task.create, refreshed, create here, and now we have our create new task from our create blade here, right? But instead of this, I will take the app layout here, I will paste it, and I will say p create new task, refresh. As we can see, create new task, back to dashboard, create new task, works correctly. Now let's build our form. I will back to dice again, and for form part, data input, let's create a new form for our create blade here. Let's remove it, and I will say form. Let's use tag for now, and the method will be post. And don't forget to use CSRF for CSRF protections. Then let's create some forms here. The first thing will be text input for title. I will take it, copy paste from here, and title, don't forget to name it. The name will be title, back and refresh. And because my machine theme is dark, it's dark, but I will disable it. If we go to dice again for themes, inside tailwind config.js, we can set it to light or whatever you want. I will set it to only to light inside tailwind config.js, right? I will just set it to light here, and if we back and refresh again, now it works correctly. Then in our columns we have title, we may have description, right? But let's make due date first. So I will duplicate this input here, and I will say date, right? And for name, I will say due date, and here also due date. If we back and check, works fine also. And we may say width full, to come here and using my to be 10, for example. Let's make it 3 only. It's okay. Be fine if you don't have experience with Steadwind. Our purpose is backend only. And then we need to add our text area for description. Alright, I will say text areas here, and let's take any one of them. Copy, paste here, back and check the view. Okay, it's fine. Let's take the width for this class here, and it's fine. Instead of bio, I will say description. Then let's add our button from buttons here. Go back and search button, and I will say select success, this button here. If we back and check, okay, let's wrap it with full div. Works also, and I need to change the text to white. That's great. You may ask why we didn't add the status here. By default, it will be pending, right? Then we need to back to migrations again here inside our database folder and migrations, and for tasks, I will say here the default value will be task status enum, set pending, and don't forget to add value here. Let's roll it back. I will say PHP artisan migrate rollback, which means it will undo the last migration. If we back to migrations here, the last one is creating tasks table, then it will undo it back by executing this drop if exist inside down method. So I will say rollback, rolled, refresh, no tasks table. I will migrate it again. Migrated. If we back to tasks table here, and by default for enum statuses, the default value is pending, right? After creating our form, now we need to implement the method to store data in our database. So I will back to task control here, and we need firstly to validate this data, but instead of validating it inside our controller, let's follow the best practice, and I will say PHP artisan make a request here, and our request name will be store task request. Created successfully inside app HTTP request is store task request, and I will open it inside our app HTTP request is store task request. And for authorization, when we create, because we don't have any authorization logic, we can set it to true, right? And for our rules for validation, to validate this form is title, due date, and for our text area, let's give it a name, also name description. We need to validate these names as we can see. So for title, it must be required as an array. I will say title using array here, required, and it must contain at least 3 letters like this with maximum 255. And for the due date here, it must be also required, and it must be a date, right? If you want to specify it, we can say after, right? And then we can say now to date string, but it can be entered anytime, right? So it can be, must be date. Then for description, it's nullable, right? And that's it. Let's back to our form or our controller, and I will use this store task request. So using store task request, it's called here also, right? This one. And I will say for task model that we created, it's installed, it's imported here also. I will say create with request validated data. First, let's say I dump this validated data, I dump request validated here. If we back, and now we need also to define the root, right? So inside our roots web.php, we can say here task, it will be post method, and then we can just say task, right? And inside controller, task controller, please use store method, and we can say store here. And then we need our action inside the form to execute the logic inside task.store. So inside action, curly braces, and I will say root task.store. If we back and refresh, works fine. I will say test and select the date, selected successfully, description, hello. And then instead of success, let's set it to create it again, any data here also, here, create. And because of the DD, now we display the data here, title, due date, and description, right? If we back and remove this DD, back to our view again, I will enter any data or even use the fake filter extension for Google Chrome. I will say create, and it's created successfully, right? If we back in our tasks table, here our new task has been created successfully with due date, and our status is pending, right? If it's also, we have a blank page, but we need to say, please, after creating it, return back. I will say return back with successful message or flash message. I will say success, and say here task created. Don't forget semicolon. If we back, fill forms again, create, works fine. We need to display the message also, but before that, if I add here, it's created by the way, but before that, let's add create, it returns again, right? Now let's create some task here. If we click create, we need to show messages for required column or show error messages for validation. We can do it easily actually inside our view here. We can say add error message here. We can say add error title. In case of title field error, display its message here. So if I back and I will say create, as you can see, title field is required. Let's wrap it with P and class text danger. Save, refresh again, send, title field is required. Okay, we can say text red with 600. Okay, now it's fine. Then we can do the same for due date and description. Due date, in case of due date message error, display it, refresh. As we can see, due date field is required, title field is required. If you don't like this due date, because Laravel detect it by removing underscore from Word, we can use attributes method. So we can say function attributes, right? And it returns array. We can say return. I will say instead of displaying due date for due date key, display just date word for due underscore date error. Just display due or date or anything we want. If I refresh, as you can see, the date instead of due date. But I will keep it because it's fine. Now refresh, due date field is required. Let's add also the error message for description, for message or description column. Refresh, it's fine. And our description is nullable because so we don't have any error message. I will say test, select date for this month and test, or just let's keep it empty. Created successfully, back and refresh. It's created also, right? Now let's display our success message. Let's define it here firstly. Let's open the tailwind dice here. We may say feedback section, this one. Let's add a toast here. Let's check the result. It's open here, okay. I will remove this one and I will say if session has success, and don't forget end if here. I will say session success, refresh. I will create a new one quickly here, and as we can see, test or task created successfully. Let's beautify it. Class, text, white, font, bold, and refresh again. Create a new task. Task created. That's great. Let's capitalize it and works fine. This is how to create or the C part for our CRUD operations. Now let's list our tasks. After creating the task, now we need to display the tasks that we created. But before that, inside the create, if I, for example, enter the title here and click create, I get the error, but the title data disappeared. How can we keep it? By using the old method. So we can go to create, and inside each input, as we can see, instead of losing the data that we entered, we can say value, and using old and old title value. The same thing for due date value here also, but for due date. And the last thing for text area. Let's do it like this for description. And then if I back and refresh, I need to remove value from here. And this double quotation, okay. If I add enter here, the value doesn't disappear. Same for any other columns also. Create, data kept. Right, now let's list our tasks. It will be listed inside dashboard. So inside our dashboard here, we need to add a table, but before that, let's implement it inside our task controller. Inside index method, I will say return here view dashboard, and I will use this method inside our web root instead of using it as a method here. I will remove it completely, and I will say task controller class and use index method. Let's back and check everything works correctly, but inside our index I want to fetch the tasks. I will say tasks equal to task here model, our model, and say paginate and display 20 tasks per page, right? And I would say we can say with tasks task like this, or if you want to keep the same, we can say here also compact tasks and remove this data completely. Or if you want to send multiple data, we can say my tasks like this and say tasks, whatever you want. All are best practice. I will say compact because our case is not complex. Tasks here, then refresh, and I need to publish table. If we back here inside Daisy, I will say table. I will use a simple table here. Let's copy its code from here, and inside our dashboard, after create button, I will add it. Let's back and check. Everything works correctly, it's fine. Now I need to remove all of these rows. I will keep only one row. I will say task ID like this, and title, new date, then let's remove it. And I will say here for each, because if I die and dump the data here for tasks, td tasks, refresh. If you noticed inside items, I have 7 tasks here, which means it's array and we need to loop through them. I will back again and check for each tasks as task. Let's take these rows above here and I will say, let's keep it one. I will show you task title and task due date. Let's add another one also for status here after title, status, capitalize it, and I will say status also. Let's remove this one, refresh, and I will remove dd also here. If you notice, the dd line and file appeared here to show you. Refresh, and as we can see, here is our tasks pending and due date. If we want to add the number of loop here, we can say easily loop iterate. Refresh. It's not iterate, it's iteration, right? As we can see here, iteration like this. If we back and refresh again, as we can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. But instead of showing it as text here, let's make it as page. If I refresh inside Daisy here, we can say page, right? And I will use this page, as we can see. Let's take any one of them like this, but without icons. Let's take this easy one. And we can use if directly here, if and else, if status is pending, displays this color, if not, displays this, right? We can say status here again, status, not status, we can say task status, and same here, task status equal to pending, and same here also task status. Let's remove it from here. Now let's back and check all pending. Let's change this color. For page secondary, I will say green or even PG and PG, and let's specify the degree, right? For pending it will be red, but for done it will be green. If I back and check in my database here, let's set it to done like this, refresh here, and it's done, works correctly, right? Let's add a small action button. I will say actions, another one td, and let's use buttons also like this, and I will call it show or edit, right? Let's control the size of this button. If we back to buttons here inside Daisy, we can say sizes, right? I will say button small, button SM, back and check, it's now small, and secondary, say success. Okay, it's fine, show or edit, but instead of go to create, I will implement the edit. So now we can create a task, we can display them, but don't forget we need also to add paginations links. So it's super easy. We can say here flex, okay, and use tasks and using links method. Refresh, because I display 20 per page, it will not appear, but if I say 3 per page, refresh, as we can see 1, 2, 3, and so on, right? Now let's set back again to 20. Everything is okay. Our dashboard is fine. Now let's implement the edit. Inside our tasks, as we can see here, I will say return view task, or what's the name? Yes, tasks.edit. but this view doesn't exist, so we need to create it. Let's make it easy here. I will say PHP artisan make view tasks.edit. It's created inside tasks edit plate here. And I want also to compact the task here. And let's define the root for get. And I will say task, right? I will say show or even edit. And I will say edit also. Let's back to our dashboard. And inside this root, I will say edit. If we back, we will get an error because the task.edit root must have a task ID or task object. So in the second parameter, because I have only one, I will say task. If you have multiple, we can say array and any other data here. Let's check works. If we have only one, because even we have only one, it's okay to define only one. Click show or edit. Now we have /7 here. All right, if we back to 3, for example, 3 and so on. Now let's check or copy paste the value from create to edit, right? If we back and refresh, check edit here. And instead of create, I will say update or save. Saved. Now let's fill the data. Value may be old or the second parameter, the default is null, but I will not say null. I will say use task current title. Refresh comes correctly. And the same for task due date, due underscore date. Refresh comes correctly also. And the same for text area or description. Task description. Let's click option Z to take it next line. Grab word. Description. And now works correctly, right? But we need also to define the state. Now the user may change the state, right? So back to tailwind again. I will say select here and I will copy this part, status, before text area, right? Let's copy it here. And instead of this input, I will say use select, back and check, right? I will say status, and I will attach statuses here to use for each. Inside task controller edit, I will say statuses. Here I will say task status enum cases, and if we undump status again here, refresh, we can see task status enum, so we can access to value here also directly. I will say, and inside our edit, let's say add for each and statuses as status, and we can say option here, value will be status and the text also will be status value. Same here, status value, refresh. We have a small error. Let's check. Yes, we need also to compact it. So I will say statuses here, back and refresh, works fine. Status pending and done. And because this ID number 4, okay, let's check the status. ID number 4 is pending. So I will say here inside edit, I will use selected if. I will say selected if the status value equal to the task status. Refresh, by default pending selected. If I back here, for example, to this one done, we can see it's done. Now let's implement the update logic for backend side. And for task controller again, by default we have task here, and I will generate a new request. But sometimes, guys, like this case, the store is same like update. So if they are the same, we can use store task request here, right? To use for both store and update. But if you notice, we have a new field called status, right? So we need to create a new one or new form request to validate update. So I will say PHP artisan make request. Okay, I will say update task request. Now it's created. If I back inside HTTP and for requests, update task request, I will set it to true, right? And I will use the same validation rules for store, right? Extra, I will say status here. Let's move it above. And I will say must be required, right? And it must be inside one of these values, task enum. You remember it that we created? How can we do it? It's super easy. We can say new enum for Laravel validation rules. It's a validation rule here, and we can pass our enum class name. I will say task status enum using a class, right? Now let's use it inside our update method. So I will say update task request as suggested here, and I will say also, as we used it inside task created, I will say here task updated or update, and use same request validated method, then return back with success. But this time I will say task updated. Let's back and check, refresh. I will move it to pending and some description here. And as we can see, it's a task created because the save button action here still for task store, but we need to update it. And same time we need to define the root also inside our web. I will say here put method put for updating, and I will say update and use method update, right? Back and refresh. It's missing the task because as we can see here takes task parameter. I will back to edit, and as a second parameter I will say task. Refresh. I will say some, save. The post method is not supported because we use put. If we open it, I use put for it. So how can we make it put? I will say add method put like this, only one add. And now let's set a state. I will say any description, refresh, doesn't work. Let's check if there any error or not. I will dive into task controller. I will check if validation works or not. Request validated, and now refresh, send a request. I have a problem with validation, so let's check the problem. I will add error message here for status. Yes, I guess a problem. So the status name status here, refresh, send status, and task updated correctly. Refresh, everything works correctly. Let's make it pending and the test update here, and this changes the date, for example, save, and everything works great for now. So let's check our flow again. Create a new task, new one, and select a date here, fill the description, create it successfully, back to dashboard, and as we can see, new one here, and show or edit, update description, saved successfully. If we check it's okay, let's change the status from pending to done, and back to dashboard, and it's done. Let's also change the order. The latest created ones must come in the first. So I will say in our task controller inside task, inside index here, I will say latest ones. And what does the latest mean? If we open it, it says order by created at, right here, order by created at disk, default value here. So back and refresh. We need to save it first, refresh again, and work is successfully because this last one is created. You can also sort by due date, latest due date. We can say due date, refresh, change it also. You can refresh or order by oldest like this. It's fine also. Old dates come first, but I will keep it for created at by default. Refresh and everything works correctly. Now let's implement the delete method, and we need to add another button here for deleting inside our dashboard. It's back to buttons again, and actually we can copy paste it from our code inside dashboard. So I will add a new button here, right button, and I will say danger, refresh, or even error. Let's check. Okay, it's fine, and I will rename it to delete. And inside our task controller, I will say task destroy or delete and return success here. Task deleted, refresh. And also we need to define it inside web.php using delete method for best practice, and use destroy, our destroy method, and I will say task.delete, right? Back here again, instead of task.edit, task.delete. And because method is delete, this one, we need to define a simple form here, like this. Simple form. We can say action. Let's take it completely, right? And I will say task.delete, method post, but here I will say method delete. Refresh. I think the problem because I created a form, so let's keep it small like this, and we will embed the edit show inside form. Yes, that's great. Okay, that's fine. Now let's set it also to type will be submit, refresh, delete, and we have this error, page expired. Why? Because we need to define another CSRF here also, right? For each form, refresh, back, refresh, delete, deleted successfully, right? Delete again, delete it, and it's fine. We need also to display a message for task deleted. So I will take it from create plate here, and let's copy this code, or even take it like this and put it anyway here. Refresh, delete another one, task deleted, right? Let's make a small refactor for our roots here. I will say root prefix, task, and task group for this prefixes function, and I will wrap all of these tasks here like this, or roots here, and I don't need any more this root. It will by default start with task slash like this. And if you notice also we have name, so name task.task.task. Instead of duplication, we can say directly name task dot, right? Or you can use as, both of them. So refresh, and still looks correctly. Create, fill data here, created successfully. Back and edit, it's fine. Show, it's okay. Let's make it as done, and it's done. Delete successfully here. One last thing that I want to do, if you notice here, if I click delete, it deletes directly, but I want to show confirmation prompt. So I asked ChatGPT about it. He said that we can just add on click and return confirm. So I will take this line here and I will add it to my code for our button. On click, return confirm, refresh, delete. Are you sure? No, nothing deleted. Delete, yes, and task deleted successfully. Check here, delete now, and now works fine. One last note, guys, about using put method here. This one, if you upload files, please don't use it, right? Replace it with a post instead of put, right? Otherwise, you can keep it. If you have any problems that it may not read codes from JSONs and so on, it's fine to use post instead of put. So here is quickly how to build a CRUD app using Laravel 11, right? We don't use this method. If you found it useful, support me by clicking on like, share, and subscribe. See you next video.